out of your Friday afternoon to come to this week's CCE Brown Bag. As you all probably know, our discussion topic this week is RVA, Branding City Pride, and we're very grateful to have Eric Martin and Lucy Meade here with us. Eric Martin is new to the University of Richmond as of this summer. He's directing the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program here, and he's the founder of 80 AMPS. So I'll let him explain a little bit more about what he does. And Lucy Meade is the Director of Marketing and Development at Venture Richmond. So I'll hand it over to you all, and they'll do a short presentation, and then we'll have time for questions.
Thank you, everyone. So what we're talking about today is branding a city, and specifically branding Richmond. And we're so lucky to have Lucy with us because Lucy and Venture Richmond were really the instigators behind the RVA brand. What's interesting, and Lucy will talk more about this, is that the RVA brand wasn't one agency or one group. It was really a collaborative effort, and if you know anything about the RVA brand, you know it is still that. What's fascinating about branding, everybody know what company this is? Right. I'd say that's an iconic brand. The brand actually isn't this. This is a logo. There's a big difference, right? So the brand of Richmond, Virginia is not the RVA sticker, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that. See if I can make this work. If I can't, I'll just do it this way. So branding from the inside out. Branding really is not about what you say about who you are. So I'm sure you can all recognize these brands. Mercedes-Benz, John Deere. That is actually the current version of the Morton Salt logo. The other one goes back, and that was the very first one. Not a big change. Anybody know why it says when it rains it pours? Yeah.
We used to have trouble with salt clumping up, and they were the first ones to figure out how to make salt so that it didn't clump up, but would always pour out and shake out the salt.
That's right. You said go into barrels, and you would dig out the salt, and it was humid. You know, if the environment was moist, it would clump. And Morton found a way to be able to make salt not clump and be poured out of containers. When it rains, it pours. Still today, it's their brand. Coca-Cola, and you guys could probably throw out what these brands stand for, at least at various times. Who can forget Nike? What do you think Nike stands for?
Read God.
That's where it was derived, right? Is Nike the tagline? So you remember Just Do It, right? Or is it the tagline? It's not really the tagline. Nike, as a brand, was designed to be able to make you feel that you can be your best self. The athlete part is only part of the mission. So they want you to feel like you're the best at what you do, and they're helping you be that. And that actually plays into what Lucy's going to talk about with the RVA symbol. Branding, if you want to ask yourself a few questions, and these are the kinds of questions that the people that were involved with Lucy asked themselves when they were trying to figure out how to brand Richmond. Who are you? Who are you as a city? What does that stand for? What do you do? And most importantly, why do you matter? So if Richmond was wiped off the face of the earth tomorrow, would people miss it? And if they did, what would they miss it for? What would be gone? If you turn back the clock, those of you who have been around Richmond for decades, as I have, know that being on the list yesterday for one of the top 8 undiscovered food cities in the world would not have been something people would have said about Richmond 30 years ago.
Very true.
Why do we matter? A brand is what other people feel about a product, service, or company, or in this case, a city. So if you take what you think about any given product, service, company, or city, and if what you feel in your gut, in your heart, is shared by a lot of other people collectively, that's what your brand really is. Your brand's what others, it doesn't matter what I say. If you feel something very differently in mass, the brand is out of alignment with what you're saying. But the brand is really what consumers of that messaging, of that product, of that service feel. So here's the really interesting thing. You go back in time even back into the 70s and 80s, when you were building a storyline for a television show, you typically built it in a way where there was oftentimes a character. You can go back to shows that some of you remember, some of you may have seen. Starsky and Hutch would be one that you probably, and every Starsky and Hutch, they were detectives in a television show. And every one of these episodes was always the same. The guys would get together, they'd kind of play with each other a little bit, you know, mock each other. There would be a protagonist. They'd go to a guy named Huggy Bear. Huggy Bear would get him a clue. They'd go find the criminal. There'd be a chase. They'd catch him. They'd take him to jail, and that was the end of the show. Every single show. Linear, linear, linear. Brand building was the same way. Like you'd say one thing. You're Morton Salt. You said it 100 years ago. You say the same thing today, and that plays out. But it's really different today. Why do you guys think it's so different?
Digital media.
Media. You guys ever talk about brands online? Ever do reviews? Right? What you're doing today in a brand is not really setting and forgetting the way you did with a brand a long time ago. What you do today, and frankly, protecting the brand, like keeping it in a box, you can't any longer do that. What you're really doing with a brand is laying a foundation. So you're laying the foundation, building a framework, but your audience, the people that interact with you as a city, as a product, as a service, they are actually laying the bricks for you. And some of the bricks you're not going to like. Right? People will be critical of you. They'll tell you that you made a mistake. And the real trick in branding today is both allowing people to engage with your brand, having a personal relationship, but also being responsive to that relationship. So, when a person complains about a brand, you respond to it. You listen to what people are talking, what people are saying about you, and you adjust. But what if what you wanted to do with your brand was to actually have people build it from the ground up? The problem is it's a double-edged sword. The double-edged sword is people love the idea that they can engage, and the problem is you're fearful of what it will become. Sure, Lucy will tell you that. In the process of thinking through the brand, that's one of the discussions that took place. What if we get something we don't want surrounding this brand? Double-edged sword. So as I was driving over today, these are just a couple that I pulled off the internet. I was driving over, the trip took 14 minutes. I saw 8 different versions of the RVA sticker. 8 different versions, and that's intentional. The question really is, now what? What comes next out of a brand? I want to introduce Lucy Meade, who's been with Venture Richmond, formerly Richmond Renaissance, for a very long time. She's been an instigator, a provocateur, and a leader, a thought leader in the city for a very, very long time, and was behind this iconic brand, RVA. And I hope she'll share with you that cities around the country have her and have Richmond talk about this because no one else has done this. We are in a leadership position. Lucy?
Thank you. Thanks, Eric. That was great. And so let me just switch real fast here. So what I want to do is, so I've been with Venture Richmond for a very, very long time. For 24 years. So almost a quarter of a century, Eric said I shouldn't say that. But when downtowns across the country in the 70s, 80s, 90s began to decline some as at one point all downtowns were the center of commercial activity, whether it was employment or retail. And then, as you probably know, that changed and retail moved out to the suburbs as sprawl and suburban development took place. And so we've been focused on regenerating, revitalizing our downtown for quite a while. And we started out we did a few marketing campaigns, but primarily telling about the economic transformation, things you can't argue with, the facts, the proof. And we got to a critical mass about 5 years ago. We're still revitalizing, but we had enough critical mass that we felt like it was okay to think about branding for downtown instead of just talking about the economic impact and economic development. So we got a group of stakeholders together, large businesses, small businesses, residents, employees, that mix, that cross-section of folks. Well, first, let me back up. First, we went to the Martin Agency, because why not go to the best in the country, right? When they're particularly in your town and at your front door. And we said, hey, would you help us create a brand for downtown? And with a little arm twisting, we got Matt Williams, who's currently the president and CEO at Martin. He's a phenomenal strategist. And he and Dean Jarrett helped us facilitate this retreat. And actually, they led the retreat. So we got about 50 people. And is that Dave McCoy? Anyway, we got about 50 stakeholders together, and they facilitated this retreat that they would have done with their customers like Geico or UPS or whatever, to really get at what is the heart of the brand of the product. And as Eric said, our product was downtown. So the original goal of this exercise, and I will say it was every bit as much, the process is as important as the outcome, because the outcome would never be what it is today if the process had not been allowed to evolve. And so we just kept that open, creative process. So the original goal was really simple. Let's develop an identity for downtown that renews passion and pride for residents. And I won't keep reading that, but you get the gist of it. And so we went through this retreat, and what the Martin Agency came back with was that we had this opportunity around the center of creativity. Now, part of the retreat, we looked at how are we perceived today? What's our personality? What's our attitude? And we always have been talking about and trying to put forth the attitude of downtown. But one of the things that the people at the retreat said was, we are creative now, we want to be creative in the future. And so this was a very authentic sort of approach. So basically, we identified there's this need to channel and redefine the growing momentum of Richmond. That our current equity was a history of nonconformity. I mean, think back about the history. Besides slavery and then desegregation, Arthur Ashe, Maggie Walker, the first recyclable aluminum can was created here at Reynolds. I mean, there's just this long list of innovation and whatnot that has come out of Richmond, but it's history of nonconformity. So everybody has history. It's just how old you are. But nonconformity is history that makes a difference, like religious freedom that was penned here. So this was very authentic. The core competency was really challenging conventional wisdom, and we're really good at challenging in Richmond. And the consumer insights at the time is there is a resurgence of creativity and experience collecting. You would rather go have cool experiences than a garage full of stuff. Okay, and that is a changing consumer behavior that's been happening for at least a decade and probably longer. And we had been talking about the creativity and innovation happening downtown for about a decade, because that's who was moving in to these cool spaces that got renovated. So all of this felt very authentic, very real. The essence of, so then, this is brand architecture. It's really boring, but it's really important. And so if you're the center of creativity, then the messages, all your messages, whether it's about education or housing or government or business, you can communicate through this lens. And the lens is about where we want to head. And I would argue it's where we have been heading for at least 5 to 10 years, but we are now more aware of that as where we're headed. Forward-leaning, proactive, engaging, timeless, not historic, because history that matters is timeless, innovative, connected, dynamic, and eclectic. So the whole idea is you tell your story sort of through that lens. So what next? That doesn't really do much, right? You can't like do it, So the next thing, the Martin Agency is busy making pitches for new clients. They couldn't help us bring it to life. So said, well, how about the Brand Center, the best in the country? So we went to the Brand Center, and Kelly O'Keefe, who was leading it at the time, said, oh, wait, you want me to do a municipal brand? No, they're never successful, they don't work. And we said, yep, we know that. But if the center of creativity is the brand, then whatever we come up with has to be creative and innovative to reflect that, or we're going to fail again. He's like, well, now that sounds like fun. So the brand students, second year students, there were 5 teams. We set up this assignment for them, and we as the downtown organization knew that if we were just going to go after a logo and a tagline, it wasn't going to engage the community. If you don't engage the community, it in fact is not a community brand. It's just a symbol. And Kelly, just like Eric, bringing that sort of expertise on branding to the forefront, said, logos and taglines don't work for communities. Think of 5 logos and taglines of a city. Maybe you remember what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, although Prince Harry proved that wrong. And maybe you know that Austin wants to keep Austin weird, but you don't really, probably can't name 5. And so this is a couple of Kelly's slides. Here's Orlando's. Have you ever heard of that? Would you ever remember it? Would it make you go there? Atlanta, my sister lives in Atlanta. I go to Atlanta all the time. Have no idea. And so Kelly also reminded us, which Eric did too, is that brands now can be flexible. We can understand Apple having 4 or 5 different products and totally different ads for each product, and we're not confused. We don't need just Maxwell House to the last drop anymore. We get it. We're sophisticated consumers. You know, I've got to use the marketing agency's little icon man of the year, the get-go. But they have a gazillion ads going at one time for Geico, and we're not confused by that as consumers. So with that sort of open canvas for the students to create under, they came back. 3 of the 5 teams said, RVA is your identity. And we're like, duh. It's the Twitter hashtag, right? It was on Facebook. For those who are my age and older, WRVA was a radio station, one of the first in the South. They used RVA. We're like, of course that's our identity. As the mayor said, brilliant. No wonder none of us thought of it. And so the idea that the students put forth was that the symbol RVA, one team, 3 said RVA, 1 said, let the RVA change. Let it become the symbol of the essence of the brand, the center of creativity. So you could put anything in it you wanted and make it your own. And we really thought that was brilliant. But then they graduated. So all we have is a little PowerPoint. And so we got to bring it to life. So we wanted to make sure that one agency didn't own it. At this point, it was evolution, right? So we asked the Martin Agency and the Brand Center to stay involved, and it's all about your team game. When you have a chance to pick a team, you pick the best. And so we got 4 other agencies who normally compete, but also have their own strengths to join the team, so that it was a collaborative effort of, in a way, like-minded people, because they were all marketing and branding specialists, but they were also competitors and brought different perspectives to the table. And so we didn't have like a group thing. We had thought-provoking, wonderful conversations as we talked about how do we launch this idea and not sort of chop it up. And so here's the team that worked on it for about 9 months. It took definitely 9 months to launch. It was about a 1.5 year process to get to the final thing. And during that point, we engaged all of these folks along the way to say, what do you think? Are we crazy? You know, how does it work for you? And so here's the power of RVA. The idea is creative itself. It can reflect a huge variety of creativity that we have here. It can tell the past stories, the present, the future. It's energetic. It brings a whole new energy to a brand. And we really started calling it open source because that was what it was becoming. In fact, we used the Creative Commons license in our language, our legal language, on the website, and it's changed since then, and really there isn't any language that describes this open source brand that we've created, and that the community has powered. So our designers, JHI, turned the idea into this beautiful RVA with the interlocking V, right, because it's all connected, all of this very intentional. And we felt like the downtown or any other words you wanted to say needed to come under the RVA, that there was a hierarchy, that RVA was the lead. We also, I forgot to mention this was way bigger than downtown. And so from the very beginning, when I was briefed with the first from our agency, I was like, we need to invite our regional partners. This is way bigger than downtown. We can't tell people what to do, but we can say, we're open. You can join us or not, but we want you to be aware. So we kept that open door from the very beginning. So, here are just some examples. RVA is energy, it dances, it donates life, it jumps forward, it cooks, it looks good. And then, so here are the components. We created a website that has a generator on it. You can go upload an image, change the wording, and create your own RVA. And so we were trying to enable people to use this. Then, of course, social media was important. We've got our Facebook page, and we work with Hodges Partnership, who helps us power the social media. We're on Twitter. We've got a blog, of course, and then here, this is just an example of, there's so much creativity here, we can't keep up with it, but there's a woman here who's a knit bomber, and she knits things and will bomb a street pole sign or something. I mean, let me just say, there's so many stories of creativity here, and people making things, and we can't keep up with it, and we try to. So, we launched it, we got a lot of publicity, we've got a video, I'm not going to show you, but I encourage you to go to RVA Creates and watch the video. It's 2 minutes, it's very inspiring. One of our team members at Elevation said, we need a giant sign. Okay, so we had a giant sign made, and I think that's been over on the Europe, but it's at events, people love to have their picture taken, of course, then it's spread on Instagram and social media, and it just powers it. So the simple objectives were celebrate the creativity already happening, encourage people to be more creative, and invite the entire community to participate. And now I'm going to just speed it up a little bit because I want to give you some examples of what's been powering it. So Venture Richmond said, well, we'll power it. So we integrated RVA in everything we do. We produce events, and this is not about Venture Richmond, but you'll get a chance. So we've done banners, dining guides, the signs in the Christmas parade, the sign's been in Chesterfield. I mean, everybody wants the sign. There's nothing city-centric anymore about RVA. John Holmes at JHI said one day, he said, we need a bumper sticker. I'm like, oh, okay. Why don't you design one and bring it to the team meeting? So he designed this, and the idea is that this is on that 3M reflective material. And the idea is that when this is on your car and I come up behind you and my light shines on it, there's a spark, right? There's a little flicker of light, and so that it reflects the spark of creativity and pride that we have here. So it's very intentional. We asked the city if they put them on their city cars, and they're like, sure. So we ordered 5,000. And and we didn't know if by having a sticker on a police car was going to make it a hot item or not so hot, right? I mean, we didn't know, but the city was our partner, and they were willing. So anyway, I'll get back to the bumper sticker. We had lots of publicity on it about all, launching it, and reformatted everything we did related to creativity. We did a catalog of creativity downtown, 75 examples. We presented this to CEOs for cities who nobody had heard of anything like this before. I just was talking to some folks at the International Downtown Association last week, and whether it was a leader in the UK or someone here in America, they're like, I've never heard of a community doing something like that. We said to ourselves, well, we got to be creative. What do we do differently? So instead of designing banners or having one company, we said, well, let's do a contest, let the people design it, and then we'll hang up 10 cool ones. And so we did. And we had some really cool banners, and folks felt really proud that their design was on a street pole downtown. We did the same thing with TV ads. We let the people submit ad concepts, and then we produced one. We have this beautiful opportunity with RVA to promote neighborhoods. So it could be RVA Churchill, RVA Short Pump, RVA Riverfront. So trying to lead by example, we created the RVA Riverfront site. TEDx RVA was launched in Richmond. The city said, hey, we've got 32 new natural gas-powered trash trucks. You want to use those as mobile billboards? I'm like, oh, yeah. So 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. These are in city neighborhoods. There are about 7 or 8 designs on them, cross-promoting all things Richmond. And then the cities used RVA a lot. RVA on Ice, the RVA Green Initiative of the mayors, RVA holiday banners. So the whole idea of this bubbling up, this is so critical. This was already being used, RVA, with these groups, and tons more, and I'm going to flip through a few. So we constantly want to acknowledge the fact that this was bubbling already. We just seized it and amplified it, and now it's literally in the vernacular of Richmond. But you have the Hoop Lovers, the Zombies, Gay RVA, LinkedIn RVA, Gay RVA, Feast RVA, RVA Fireworks, RVA Arts District, Active RVA, RVA Craft Beer, even Ray Boone, who has passed away now, but Occupy RVA. I mean, when I say we hit, I don't mean we went out and hit. I mean, the bubbling up hit all corners of this. And so you can see, this is just examples of different ones. It went way beyond downtown. It's all over the place. We didn't pay for these billboards, they just did it, which was the whole point. We want people to just take it and run with it. No permissions needed. The RVA sticker made it on Saturday Night Live when Reggie Pace, the Vaughn, was playing with Vaughn Iver. That got a ton of social media. I don't think we really use Foursquare a lot anymore, but Foursquare RVA was one of the 5 cities that had an ID. And this is an example of a business using RVA. We had some interns this summer go through the State Corporation Commission's entire directory, and there are 379 businesses that have RVA in their name registered at the State Corporation Commission. Is that amazing? 109 before we launched. So being open source has been critical to the success. So here are just some examples of other merchandise or bumper stickers or programs. We've given out over 200,000 now. Somebody even collected a bunch and put a unicorn on the hood of their car. The bands want to put them on when they're at the folk festival. This is my favorite. It's probably leaked out of the video, but somebody posted on Tumblr, finally called the little bastard that's putting these damn RVA stickers on all the cars. I just think that's so cute. Campaigns have been launched around it. We had nothing to do with this. I mean, we haven't been directing people. People don't have to ask permission. UR was one of the first to do their own bumper sticker. I want to give them credit. In fact, somebody called and said, I cannot believe that UR can't just go with the flow and have this bumper sticker. Why did they do their own? And I'm like, well, that's exactly what we wanted to do. Is that we want people to make it their own. We want people to show their creativity, their pride. And so the beauty of it is you can be an individual, right? But you are a student or alum, but then you're tied into the whole brand and the community. So that is another aspect of it that is way more beautiful than we ever thought when we first did it. So anyway, so there's merchandise galore. We can't keep track of it. We decided that you could go and make merchandise and make a profit. We weren't going to license or do royalties, and you didn't have to ask their permission. Eric mentioned the quality issue. We had a long talk about, what if someone uses the RVA on something that's not so creative and kind of cheesy. And we thought, well, that's us being judgmental and subjective. We need to just open it up and go. And what Kelly used this terminology. What has happened is there is this, there's really a trust from the community. The community has bought into this, and we have not had really any examples of something that we would want to correct or turn around. So you can see it's sort of everywhere. It's gone regional. The regional organization, Greater Richmond Partnership, that has elected officials from the whole region on it, is using RVA through two of their programs. And it's made it in a lot of magazines. And of course, they put banners up with the RVA, which we were thrilled with, and it's really awesome. And then you can help me with something. We're trying to get 350 prepaid license plates so that we have an official RVA license plate at DMV. And I need a bunch more. So if you want to go on to RVA license plate, they're $10 for generic or $20 for personalized. And here's just a quick little summary of what I think the elements of success are. Open source, organic, empowering, lack of control, community ownership, community coming together around the RVA, energy and pride, no one's excluded, any age can participate. And I think that those of us who have been powering it, it's been done in a sort of a gracious, understated, subtle way instead of a top-down, controlling, pushing way. Does that make sense? And there's a huge difference there. So, join the So we've got, we're around. Stickers, but I think they're, where are they?
They have them in the books.
Okay, they have them in the bookstore, but I brought you some of these and a big stack of them so you can be creative and put a uniform on your closet. But anyway, so Eric and I would love to just take questions, have a conversation. I think to just underscore one of his points, you know, you just, with social media, you can't control any brand anymore anyway. I mean, you really can't. You know, everybody's an expert and everybody's right. You know, if you say you're right, you're right. And so, anyway, so I think that this was, there's some synchronicity when as far as timing goes, you know, with this, that it kind of evolved, you know, at a time where there was also an appetite for it. I don't know if there would have been 15 years ago. Come on. So any thoughts, questions, dialogue, anything?
I have a couple questions. I see that the A has changed over time. There was a...
Oh, very observant.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. One is a silhouette, and this is the official one, but there is a silhouette version which I had in the first one that had the wonderful picture in it of, I think it was the bridges or something. So I can't find that JPEG to recreate it with this version, so I'll just use that one anyway. But it's so some people like the silhouette one. So on the website we have the EPS of this, which is, if you were going to say official, this is really fully official. But then we also have the silhouette one. So the sign had to be built as a silhouette in order to support the letters. So there's an opening here, and then there's one there. But very, very observant.
I have a question. I may have missed this. When was launch?
Okay, so it'll be 4 years old in February.
Okay, and is there any way to quantify your success besides bumper stickers in terms of like fiscally downtown? Have they seen increases in revenues, or do you?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So I think there is a real positive energy about downtown. And this clearly, when we launched it, you know, we were pushing the RVA downtown a whole lot, even though the brand was RVA Creates, because we're powering downtown. And so we haven't done a survey. You know, sometimes it's more expensive to measure a success or failure than it is than to not. But I've had people who live out in the county say, my wife wants to know why we're not going downtown more. Everybody in our neighborhood has one of those bumper stickers on their cars. Now, the bumper sticker doesn't say downtown. It just says RVA. And so we are seeing a growing momentum in particularly the dining scene downtown, but also in Richmond. We were up to 14,000 people living downtown. So I think what this has done is change the attitudes and awareness for downtown, as well as the city, which it's more of an image, if that makes sense, and branding than it is literally, we want to increase sales by X. That was never a goal. It was more to create a community identity. But I think the outcome, when you see how many businesses, for example, have used it as their name, you look at, just start paying attention. But the other day on the radio, it was like talking about the weather, and it's like, we're going to have rain and the RVA. I mean, RVA is used hundreds of times all day, every day. So what we really did was power this pride-building passion this brand that underscores the passion here. And so I think we serve the greater community more than just downtown, and we're delighted that it bubbled out of downtown.
It's really difficult to know which drives the momentum, right, at some level. Because here, I mean, think about what happened in the last 4 years. Think about the University of Richmond and VCU in the NCAA tournament. I mean, there have been things that have happened. We've been on lists now as the #3 most tattooed city per capita, the next hip city after Austin, the happiest city. the best new restaurant in town, one of the 8 undiscovered restaurants, and I can go on and on and on with the list, and that's all happened. Did it happen because of the effort to create this community around RVA? I don't think it's distinguishable. I think it's both. I think it's integrated. And at some level, we get lucky because good things happen when we do good things. You know, it played off of itself, and at the same time, if you don't have something that galvanizes, you know, that brings the community together, it's hard to have a so one of the questions, you know, I'd like to ask you is, what do you think RVA means? What does it mean to you?
I'll take a stab at that. I think, because I've lived here a pretty long time, and the fascinating thing to me is that there has been this amazing convergence of the RVA logo and great restaurants and the New Virginia Museum, and, you know, you are downtown, and, you know, we could go on and name all these great, you know, things that are happening in Richmond. And I think that the timing is just impeccable, whether it was by design or by accident. And I think it helps to build a lot of pride. Because for a long time, Richmond, you know, we weren't so proud of it. I mean, it was okay.
We were in Charlotte's shadow.
Yeah.
People always compared us kind of unfavorably to Charlotte.
High
And
crime rate.
high crime rate.
Yeah.
Those were the things we were known for 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think that you know, Richmond has always had a lot of pride, even when we have our challenges. There are people who, there's a lot of pride in Richmond. A lot of you are grads, stay here. A lot of you a lot of grads from Union and State. I mean, Randolph-Macon, you know, will come back. But I think what the RVA has done has made the positive have a louder voice and amplify the positive way more than the negative. And so while there are all those positive people, sometimes the negative people are the loudest, and then maybe just a handful. And I mean, there's reasons to be negative. I'm not saying there's only reasons to be positive. But I think what happens is sometimes negative seems to end up louder than the positive. What's so interesting about the RVA is it is like drowned out some of the negative with all this positive that is proof point positive, right? It's not superlatives, us saying, we want to be the most creative city, and we are creative. You just have to look for it. I mean, you know, and so that to me is a really important, and how do you measure that? I mean, but I think that has happened, if that makes any sense.
You know, to me, that one of the issues is how do you now, what's next for RVA? When you think about, we have the good fortune of being here because of the Center for Civic Engagement, which is a tremendous resource for the university, and provides outreach into the community from the terrific students, faculty, and staff. What would RVA's bumper sticker look like if it was designed for a Gilpin court?
Or, but I think what you would, that is, how would Gilpin Court design their
Right,
own?
exactly. What would be behind RVA, right? So, you know, to Lucy's point, it's not that there's a sense that there's any desire to drown out that. I think the next step is to be able to uplift people in all parts of the city behind that RVA symbol. And some of that is through the creation of jobs and opportunity that come in the makers movement that's really boomed through this process. A lot of apprenticeship. So there's a terrific opportunity to take this to another level. You have to have an anchor though. You have to start somewhere. A lot of communities get locked up when they do this kind of work because they try to solve the problems, the very severe problems that take place in underprivileged parts of town. But to be able to uplift everybody, there has to be an anchor. And this started with downtown. It's now, you know, spread throughout the region. Somebody had a question.
I was just going to say, I moved to Richmond about 8 years ago from Southwest Virginia. And I remember when I was first moving here and telling people I was moving to Richmond, I kind of got this reaction like, oh, why would you want to live there? And now, Especially in the past couple of years when I go other places and I tell people I live in Richmond, they're like, oh, RVA. I mean, I've heard that so many times. And so I think, I mean, RVA to me means a place you want to be. And I think that other people across the country see that. Because now people are like, oh, you live in Richmond? That's awesome. When, you know, just a short time ago, it was like, oh, I would never want to go there. Now people want to come here.
Cool. I might tell your story.
Sure.
Yep.
Do you ever see this becoming like a sub-brand of our city? And maybe what I'm trying to ask is, I think a lot of people are seeing maybe a lack of creativity because we're all using the RVA moniker. Like everything is just RVA. And it's becoming almost, it's both this double-edged sword. It's this great thing, but it's also a distinct challenge now, and we're trying to brand different things that always has to have
But so I think, well, on one hand, it doesn't always have to have RVA.
Right.
Okay, I mean, there's nobody says it has to have RVA. That's completely what people want to or you don't. One of the what's next that we've talked about is, you know, when you buy an Apple product, the box says design and Cupertino. So wouldn't it be cool if everything created here had just a little something that said RVA creates to remind folks. So for some companies, it easily could be a sub-brand, right? So for like the Greater Richmond Partnership that is promoting, selling Richmond outside of Richmond to global companies to come here or whatever, they're using, and they're working with Henrico, Chesterfield, Hanover, and Richmond. So when they go out, the Henrico guy has his Henrico shirt on, but it says RVA USA. And the city one in Hanover. So in some instances, it already has become a sub-brand. And, you know, from the very beginning, when we were brainstorming all the things you can do to bring to life, first thing somebody said, change RIC. Right? I mean, RIC needs to be, well, RIC is the airport. RVA is the community brand. And then somebody else like, are you going to change your name? Venture Richmond to Venture RVA? We're like, no, that's the name of our organization. You know, but you can name yours RVA blank blank. You know. And so, but nobody knew whether it would have legs. Okay, it seems to have legs. We couldn't change our mind about it being open source because it's out there too much. You know, I don't know how we rein it back in. There's some people that have had a little bit of a anti-RVA kind of thing. It's like, we need something different. And so they literally do anti-RVA, but I'll just use that. So they did like anti-RVA, and he kind of laughed and was like, well, that's exactly. You're using the brand how you want to use it. You're being creative, and that's pretty cool. That's fine with us. That's okay. You know, it's not groupthink. Creativity is not about everybody thinking the same and doing the same. And so we created a structure and a foundation, back to what Eric so eloquently kind of walked you all through, that you can plug and play in or not, and that's your choice.
Think about this, for those of you who went to the Street Art Festival or ever saw the Street Art Festival, there are instances of RVA being tucked in to street art within the festival, but the more important example would be a guy like Ed Trask, who is a tremendously talented artist and does street art as well as other art, wearing an RVA t-shirt while he's doing his design that does not have RVA in it. Right? That's really, I think that's more ultimately the point. It's not about art, the symbol being the center, it's about creativity being the center and RVA being the galvanizing force, the thing that gives people pride.
And this is a sort of a poetic example, and there's a lot of sort of poetry underlying this and how the community uses it if you kind of look around and see.
You know, I think we've run
So
past time a little bit. Any last questions?
I was going to say, any ideas for what's next? What do you think should be next? But, you know, what is your question?
I'm really interested in this paradigm shift that I'm hearing between sort of a corporate model about we own brands and logos and we're going to make money from them, to this big leap you made to trusting a class,
A community.
Came up, and the community that came up with this idea of these blank letters. And there were just a bunch of students, and so full disclosure, that's what I do here at U Bar. I'm just intrigued. What made you?
I mean, we just thought it was brilliant. It was so simple, and it let people engage. And it was like, let's try it. I mean, who knows, whenever you launch a brand or a new product, you have no idea whether people are gonna embrace it or not.
You cannot manufacture hell.
So we were just,
I mean, you can't will it to be.
right, we had sort of a little bit, maybe it was a little fearless, but when you get a team of, so we had 6 very smart Richmond ad agency marketing folks on the team, and then the Venture Richmond team in the city. And we all thought, what a great idea. Now, we had lots of discussions about, should we use the word creativity or not? Should we do this or not? Should we, I mean, we bantered back and forth. I mean, there are 24 2-hour Monday morning meetings. 2 hour, every meeting was 2 hours on Monday morning, every other Monday. 24 of them to be ready to launch. And, so there was a lot of discussion. And, we just kept saying, I think we're onto something. And the community, but we also said in the same breath, will the community even embrace this? Well, is it going to seem too top down? Is it, will the community embrace it? And so everything we did was trying to think through doing it in a way that the community would embrace. So that list of all the people that we engaged, I mean, we checked in with people. We checked in with some people that don't always like what we do. We wanted to hear what people had to say. And ultimately letting go, it's kind of an anti-brand, really. I mean, a lot of other communities are like, oh, we have an open source brand, and it's a logo, it's a logo, and you can use it in these 2 colors, and you put it in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can only put it on your ads. Whatever the rules are, because branding is about standards, it's about rules. A company may or may not be able to use this model. It may work better for a community that needs to be able to express multiple views in itself differently than a product that is one thing.
But it's being played out in other ways. So the Tesla logo, as an example, on electric cars is used very consistently. But Tesla took its intellectual property and made it open source. So they actually opened up one of the core bits because they recognized the value wasn't in their patents and their IP, it was in what they did with these things and creating this terrific product. So companies are increasingly looking, I think Lucy's use of the term open source is one of the keys to this. It's what can you open source? When you think about Creative Commons, you have degrees of what you can open. And I think that's really, this isn't going to be right for everybody, but there is this sense that you have to let people engage because the engagement actually works to your benefit. If you lock things down too much, then people's reaction tends to be to fight back. The last thing you want is a captive audience that's unhappy. Right? They're the most dangerous. This allows people to express themselves. They're never captive in this brand. And this is about them. This brand is branding you. Do you want to be captive in a brand that you don't love? I mean, that's...
So one quick little last story. So there's a guy making some Bloody Mary mix here that he's going to sell.
From University of Richmond.
From University of Richmond. And we're thinking about maybe using RVA in the name. And I'm like, well, that's great. You didn't need to call. You didn't need to ask. We'd love for you to. But, I said, well, just out of curiosity, can you describe your mix? Is it real salty? And he goes, oh, it's spicy, but it's not too salty. And I was like, well, that'd be a perfect use for RVA. Very aligned with our community. So anyway, thank you all so much for commenting and letting us run over.
Thank you all of you for being here. Grab a last slice of pizza or a brown bag card on your way out to see what next week's is. We have Beyond Asphalt, Highways, Parking, and Sustainability next Friday, the trip folder for Parking Day. And thank you all so much.
Yeah, great. It was fun.
Hey, let's go.
A lot of people. Super. Oh, yeah.